A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries.
As you are watching this video, the United States of America and the State of Israel are conducting what may be the most consequential military operation of the 21st century, Operation Epic Fury, major combat operations against Iran without a congressional declaration of war. Today, John Gray is going to do what the mainstream press cannot seem to do in a crisis. Follow the...
It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon.
Logic. In the early hours of February 28th, 2026, a joint American-Israeli strike package hit targets across Iran: Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karash, Kermanshah. The Pentagon named it Operation Epic Fury. Israel named it Operation Roaring Lion. President Trump appeared on Truth Social, 8 minutes, and said this: "Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime." He pledged to annihilate Iran's navy, obliterate its missile industry, and this is the part the mainstream press is struggling to frame, he called on the Iranian people to, quote, "take over your government." This is not a limited strike. This is not a cruise missile message. This is a campaign. Iran has already retaliated. Ballistic missiles into Israel, into Saudi Arabia, into the United Arab Emirates, into Qatar, into Bahrain, and Kuwait. Jordan reports it intercepted 49 drones and missiles threatening its territory. The region is in motion, and Washington is already at war with itself. Here is the constitutional reality, and I want you to understand this clearly, because the media is going to either ignore it or get it wrong. The United States Constitution divides war power between two branches. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the power to declare war. Article 2, Section 2 makes the President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Those two provisions are meant to require cooperation. They have not required cooperation in 70 years. Congress passed the War Powers Resolution in 1973, after Nixon secretly bombed Cambodia without telling anyone. The resolution says the President must notify Congress within 48 hours of committing forces to hostilities, and those forces must come home within 60 days unless Congress authorizes the mission. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has confirmed he briefed the Gang of Eight, the top congressional leaders from both parties, before the strikes. That is not full authorization, but it is the consultation the law requires prior to notification. The 60-day clock is now ticking. Now here is where it gets constitutionally serious. Legal scholar Jonathan Turley wrote this morning that the president has precedent on his side. Clinton struck Iraq. Obama struck Libya. Biden struck Syria. Not one of them sought a declaration of war. Not one of them was stopped by Congress. But, and follow me here, those precedents do not make the underlying legal question settled. They make it worse. Every time a president acts without Congress, the institutional muscle of the legislature atrophies a little more, and the next president inherits a larger executive claim. We are now at the point where the President of the United States can initiate major combat operations, his words, major combat operations, against a nation of 90 million people without a single congressional vote. That is worth naming clearly. Even if you support this operation, even if the intelligence justified it, the mechanism matters. Run the logic bridge test. Let's be honest about what the administration actually found itself facing. Following the 12-day conflict in June 2025, what Israel called Operation Rising Lion, Iran's nuclear infrastructure was damaged, significant damage, but not eliminated. Here is the core technical problem. You can bomb buildings. You cannot bomb knowledge. By February 2026, United States intelligence and the International Atomic Energy Agency had identified what analysts are calling Pickax Mountain, a facility south of the Natanz being excavated at depths of 80 to 100 meters into solid granite. The GBU-57, the massive ordnance penetrator, America's largest conventional bunker buster, has a tested penetration depth of roughly 60 meters into reinforced concrete. Granite is harder. 100 meters may be beyond its reliable reach. Iran was building a nuclear facility specifically designed to be immune to the only tool America has to destroy it. That is not a negotiating posture. That is a military countdown. Simultaneously, Iran's stockpile of 60% highly enriched uranium sat at approximately 400 kilograms, enough, once processed, for more than 10 nuclear devices. The estimated breakout time to enough weapons-grade fissile material for a first weapon, less than 1 week. 1 week. The International Atomic Energy Agency inspection window, the traditional mechanism of international verification, requires more than 1 week to convene, travel, and inspect. The diplomatic architecture had already run out of time before the diplomats admitted it. And the Geneva talks, which Oman's foreign minister described as producing a breakthrough as recently as February 27th, need to be examined carefully. Oman reported that Iran had agreed to downgrade its enriched uranium to the lowest level possible and accept full verification. If true, that agreement, reached the day before the strikes, is the most contested fact of this entire episode. The administration must address it publicly and directly. We do not yet have the full picture, but the question is legitimate. Let's run the logic bridge test on what the mainstream press is saying. Claim 1. This was a war of choice. Diplomacy was working. The actual record shows that Iran simultaneously engaged in technical talks and excavated a bunker specifically designed to survive American military action. Those two activities are not compatible with good faith diplomacy. They are compatible with using diplomacy as a timer. Claim 2. The strikes are illegal under domestic and international law. The domestic law question, the War Powers Resolution, is genuinely contested. Reasonable constitutional scholars disagree. What is not reasonable is to state this as settled fact when 53 years of executive practice says otherwise. The international law question involves the doctrine of anticipatory self-defense, a recognized principle that permits the use of force to prevent an imminent attack before it occurs. The administration's argument is that a nuclear-armed Iran with a sub-1 week breakout time constitutes exactly that imminent threat. You can disagree with that application. You cannot call it legally frivolous. Claim 3. The strikes will destabilize the region. Let me bring this home. The Islamic Republic of Iran has, for 47 years, been the primary engine of instability in the Middle East. It funds Hezbollah. It armed Hamas. It has targeted American military personnel through its proxy network. It has harassed commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, a passage through which roughly 20% of the world's traded oil flows. The question is not whether the region is stable today. It is not. The question is what kind of instability we are choosing to manage. A nuclear-armed Iran, shielded from consequences by a deliverable warhead, does not produce stability. It produces a 47-year problem with a nuclear umbrella over it. John Gray does not do propaganda, so let's be fair. There are 3 serious objections to Operation Epic Fury, and they deserve serious answers. First, the Oman breakthrough problem. If Iran genuinely agreed on February 27th to full verification access and enrichment downgrade, and the United States struck anyway, then the administration bypassed a potential diplomatic solution at the moment it was materializing. That is not a talking point. That is a genuine moral and strategic failure scenario that the administration must address. Second, the congressional authority problem. Representative Thomas Massie, a Republican, came out against the strikes on constitutional grounds this morning. Senator Tim Kaine called it dangerous and unnecessary. Senator Warren Davidson, also a Republican, said he would support a war powers resolution next week, absent further information. The institution of Congress cannot permanently outsource its war power to the executive branch, and then complain when the executive uses it. But it also cannot remain relevant if it never acts. Democrats who want a war powers vote now were conspicuously silent when President Obama conducted strikes in Libya, Syria, and elsewhere without authorization. The principle must be applied consistently, or it is not a principle. Third, the can you actually finish this problem? Technical analysts are cautious. Iran's scientific knowledge cannot be destroyed. If Pickax Mountain survived the strikes, if even a portion of the hardened infrastructure held, Iran retains both the fissile material and the institutional knowledge to eventually reconstitute a weapons program. Destruction is not the same as elimination. The question of the day after and the year after is one the administration has not yet answered publicly. History will be the judge here, and history offers a useful reference point. In 1981, Israel struck Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor. The United Nations condemned it. The United States condemned it. Ronald Reagan's administration called it a violation of international law. 10 years later, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and did not have a nuclear weapon because of that strike. In 2007, Israel struck a Syrian nuclear facility at Al-Kibar. The world barely noticed. The Syrian civil war, which began 4 years later, did not involve nuclear weapons because of that strike. Those operations, condemned at the time, are now regarded as having prevented catastrophic outcomes. The Begin Doctrine, named for Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, holds that a state facing an existential nuclear threat has the right to remove that threat preemptively before it becomes irreversible. Operation Epic Fury is the Begin Doctrine applied at industrial scale, not to a single reactor, to an entire dispersed, hardened, sophisticated program. The scale of the precedent is the scale of the threat. Let me bring this home. There is a simple question that cuts through all of the noise. Is the United States, constitutionally, legally, and strategically, in a better position tonight than it was yesterday? Constitutionally, the War Powers Resolution has been triggered. Congress has 60 days to either authorize this operation or force its termination. For the first time in years, the legislature is being asked to do its job. Whether it will is a different question, but the mechanism is in motion. Legally, anticipatory self-defense is not a made-up doctrine. It is a contested but recognized principle that responsible governments have applied for decades. The administration must now make that case, in public, to Congress, and to the international community. Strategically, if the strikes have genuinely disrupted Iran's centrifuge assembly capacity, the solid fuel propellant production lines for its missile forces, and the weaponization testing infrastructure, then the breakout timeline has been extended. Not eliminated, extended. That extension buys time for either a genuine diplomatic settlement or a fundamental change in the Iranian regime's nature. President Trump has made clear he is betting on the latter. He has explicitly called for the Iranian people to reclaim their government. That is a moral statement, a strategic bet, and a foreign policy doctrine all wrapped into one social media post. The Iranian people, who have been suppressed, who saw 2,000 of their fellow citizens killed by their own government during economic protests, who have lived under one of the most brutal internal security apparatuses on earth, deserve to be part of this analysis. They are not abstractions. They are 90 million people who did not choose this regime. Whether American military action helps or harms their cause is not something anyone can know with certainty today. But the logic of deterrence, real deterrence, credible deterrence, is not a request. It is a physical reality. And for 20 years, the world asked what would happen if Iran crossed the nuclear threshold while protected by a delivery capability. Today, the administration chose not to find out. You may agree with that choice, you may not, but follow the logic and make that judgment with clear eyes. This is John Bray,